All right, everyone, let's do this. How are you? Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? Thanks for stopping by. On the show this week, I talked to my good friend Nick Gibson. He's a singer, songwriter, guitar player based in Nashville. We talk about his early days. We talk about how he and I met, and we talk about the influence his grandfather had on him early in life, man. It's a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Let's check it out. Tell everyone who you are.
What's going on, everybody? My name's Nick Gibson, and I'm from Oklahoma, which is actually where Bernie and I met, but now living in Nashville. Been here in Nashville for a while as an artist slash side musician slash crew member slash whatever to keep my foot in the door in the music business, man. So I kind of
do it all,
everything.
Man, and that's what you got to do, right?
Yeah, to keep this dream alive, whatever we got to do, we got to do it,
It's funny. Let's get this out of the way. You and I have been friends since 2007.
I was going to say, yeah, I think it was 7. Yeah.
And I think we've only hung out a couple of times.
Yeah. It's, I remember I was reminding you the other day when we were talking. So I can't remember what it was with my amp, but my amp's reverb must have died because I know at some point I modded it and, went down that whole road, but you were guitar teching for Pat Green at the time, and we were at the Tumbleweed Stillwater opening for I think it was us,
Pat Green and Randy Owens.
Yeah. So that's right. Yeah, I couldn't remember who the third one was, but yeah, and we were sound checking, and I that's the only thing I could think is that the reverb went out on my amp. Like I said, I know that it did because I had to rebuild the reverb unit. But
you want to know what it was? And this is what I remember the most.
Okay, yeah.
You guys were loading in and you were carrying your amp up on your shoulder and you tripped and fell.
Oh no. Okay, so that's a different show. That's a different show.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so we'll talk about that. But yeah, so okay. So it was two different Pat Green shows. So the very first one was you and me. It was at Tumbleweed in Stillwater, and I think it was me, Reckless Kelly, Pat Green. I think that was the lineup that night, and it was either the big Calf Fry or College Days, whatever they have there, and my reverb was gone out in the amp, and so you just out of the kindness of your own heart were like, hey man, I've got this reverb pedal if you want to use it, and I was like, oh man, that'd be great, thank you. Plugged it in, got my verb back, played the show, and came back after our set to give you the pedal back, and you go, you know what, man, keep it. I'm not going to use it. And dude, I kept that thing. I don't know I'm sure you saw when it happened. It's been almost 10 years now, but when the robbery happened and I lost all my gear here in Nashville, but I used it from the day that you gave it to me all the way until somebody stole it. So now it's out. It's out there in the world, somebody else's reverb. But yeah, the Randy Owen one that I did. If I remember correctly, there had been like a huge storm the night before, and it had like knocked the staging down, and it was this whole thing. And so all the sound checks and line checks and everything were like pushed way back. We were way behind schedule, and the stage man, whoever the local festival stage manager guy was like trying to rush me, and he was like, okay, so like when Pat Green's guys are taking their stuff off the stage, you guys go out there. And I remember saying to him, well, we're going to cross wires at that point. Shouldn't we just let them get off? And he was like, no, just go out there while they're, and I was like, okay. And I went walking out, and one of the local hands grabbed Brett's pedal board. And when he picked it up, my foot got caught in his pedal board loom. And that's when my amp went flying across, and it hurt so bad, dude. The band still gives me a hard time about it now. But I remember my leg swelled up so much, and I had this like pink gauze wrapped around it with an ice bag. That was the only way I could play, so I had to like play in shorts and stuff. But yeah, that was definitely a memorable gig.
Yeah. That's the one I remember, And then, like I said, when we were texting yesterday, you brought up the reverb pedal, and I was like, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. That was, I think that was the first gig we met. Like I said, and I used that reverb pedal all the way till it was stolen. So hopefully somebody's out there.
You paid it forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I paid it forward, unintentionally, but I paid it forward.
Right on, man. Well, dude, yeah, we've been friends since then, man.
Yeah, dude.
I've followed your career. Like you said, you've done it all, man.
Man, yeah, a little bit of everything. I like to say that the only thing I've never done, I've never done it. I've never been a merch guy, and I've never been an LD. But everything else, I've pretty much covered on the road.
When I was with Pat, I was the stage left guitar tech and the merch guy.
Oh wow, that's a
count in the merch. Yeah. Hire somebody locally, go do the show, come back, count it out.
So. Oh man, that's yeah. When I was out on the road, before the pandemic, our merch guy with the artist I was playing with, Hunter, man, great dude. But I saw how hard, he had to work and more the tedious part of it, right? Like you said, counting out numbers, making sure that all this stuff is handled. It's like, dude, that's something I don't want to have to do if I don't have to.
You know what? A lot of folks don't know, like everything that on the road cost an artist money.
Yeah.
The merch guy is the only one making him money.
That's making, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, man.
And keeping everybody in t-shirts.
On
laundry day.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, man, when did you start playing guitar?
So that's kind of a two-part question. The short answer is I started playing guitar when I was 16. Mm-hmm. The longer part of that answer is my grandpa was an educator his whole professional life, and he was also a music teacher. And so growing up, you go visit your grandparents, and they lived out in the country south of Oklahoma City. And so when I'd go visit, he had an old Ford pickup truck, and if he's going to the grocery store, he'd say, "Hey, I'm going to the store. You want to ride with me?" Yeah. And so I'd just jump in with my grandpa, and we'd tool on down the road, and he'd crank up country music. And at some point, him being a music teacher, he realized that I was singing along to the radio and I was in pitch. And so without knowing it, he kind of gave me not singing lessons, but he kind of nurtured just my natural singing ability. And this was on my mom's side. My dad's side of the family is well known. I'm Native American on dad's side of the family, and my dad, my uncles, their dad are all real well known stomp dance singers in Oklahoma. I think I got that from his side of the family, the singing voice, and so the earliest memory that I remember doing that ever since I was, little bitty, but my first memory of, I guess, music, right? Like playing music or performing music. I remember the question he asked me is probably because at the time it didn't make sense, but he said, "Who's this singing?" And I was like, I don't know. And I think I said George Strait or something like that. And he told me, he said, "No," he said, "you got to use your ear, listen, and you'll be able to tell each singer sounds different, And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Travis Tritt." And he was like, "Yeah, that's right." And so he kind of set me from that point on, playing, using my ear, listening, not playing, classically trained or whatever.
Yeah.
And, so that's how it started. And I would just sing with my grandpa in the truck, and he was the only person I could sing in front of. I couldn't even sing in front of my mom. I just stage fright galore, which is funny now, considering doing what I do. But my grandparents also had started this organization in Oklahoma called Oklahoma Kids, and it had grown to be national. It's called American Kids, and basically their kind of tagline was a little league of entertainers, right? So if maybe you weren't interested in sports, right, and didn't want to play little league baseball, but you could sing, you could dance, you could act, you could do a monologue, you could play an instrument. It was kind of like any kind of entertainment if you wanted to do it, and it was for kids. I forget, kindergarten through high school senior, I think is what was the thing. And so I grew up around that. Throughout American Kids Organization. As they grew, they relocated to Branson, Missouri. And they had national finals every year. It was competitions, but it was also just variety shows too. They kind of did both. And I would help. It's kind of funny. American Kids is really what started everything, because I started off doing crew. I would run cameras, I would run lights. So I guess I have been an LD now that I think about
it. Trying to block that out.
Try to block that part out. Yeah. Just, sound, anything that they needed for whatever event we were at. And I would see these other, kids performing, and my grandpa and my grandma, they kept trying to get me to do it. And I just, like I said, I signed up for a couple of them. One of them was this was the last one I remember. But I signed up. It was they were having a performance at, Silver Dollar City in Branson. And I had signed up I was going to sing. I think I was probably 14 or 15 at this point, I was like, all right, I'm going to sing. I'm going to do it. And I got up there or I was about to sing, and just, the stage fright just took me over, maybe 2 or 3 kids before I was going to go. And I was like, man, I can't do it, and to my grandparents' credit, they didn't force me. I think if they had, it would have been, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, So fast forward a couple years, I kept doing the crew stuff, and they had produced it was the first all kids cast show on the Strip in Branson. It was, the American Kids Show is what it was called. I think they did 2 seasons, because I think it was 16. So I must have been 13 or 14 when the last time I had that stage fright. So I went for, a couple seasons and did the same thing, helped with sound, helped with lights, helped with whatever I could help with on the crew side of things. At some point after hanging out with the cast, for 2 years, one of the girls, I don't remember where we were going, but we were all in a van. We were all going somewhere. And they heard me. One of the girls heard me singing just along. It was Tim McGraw, Just to See You Smile. That was on the radio, and I was just kind of singing along to myself. And when she heard me, I obviously stopped because I started freaking out. She's like, "Oh my God, we didn't know you could sing." And so her family, they really pushed me to try to be a part of this thing. And I just was still like, no. And they were having auditions for the next year's show. They were really trying to get me to just try out for the show. They're like, it'll be easy. Cause at that point they knew that I was stage fright, and I tried before and all this stuff. But I came home from that trip. I remember my mom kind of just pulled me aside. Pretty much right as I walked in the door. I could tell you where I was standing, what house I was in, right where it was when this, you have moments like that.
Yeah.
She pulled me aside. She goes, son, I want to tell you something. Your grandpa's not going to be here forever. He really wants you to do this thing. He really wants you to get up and sing. And she said, you should consider doing this just for him. She said, if you hate it, that's fine. You never have to do it again. But at least you went up and, don't do it for you. Just get up there and do it for your grandpa. And for whatever reason, that clicked in my 16-year-old brain,
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'll do it. And so, we went through, it was this whole thing. Then you had to because it was auditioning for this show. I didn't really care about the show so much. Right. Cause I was like, wow, I'm just going to do this for my grandpa. I don't remember the time frame, but fast forward to where I'm going to do this audition. And like I said, I'd had 2 or 3 years of the cast. I knew most of them. I knew the families. Obviously I knew the crew guys. Right. So the audition day comes. And so I tell the crew guys, I'm like, hey, blast me with light. I don't want to see the audience. I don't want to be able to see anything, cause in my brain, I'm like, well, if I can't, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. Right. And so I had to go out and you had to sing pick 2 songs. Right. So I had, I'd gone through all that. All the families had helped me because they'd all had, essentially they were karaoke tapes, and we sat there and you had to cut through, because I think it was only 30 seconds or something like that. I sang "It Should Have Been a Cowboy," Toby Keith, and I sang Seminole Wind, John Anderson, because of the Native American connotation. And so I remember, and I remember right before I walked out on stage, the stage manager, that I had known being there at the show for the last couple of years, he goes, "Hey, when you go out there, don't lock your knees." And I looked at him and I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Don't lock your knees." But it took me out of the moment just enough to not think about it and just think about not, making sure my knees weren't locked. And I remember, like, when I walked down on stage, just like real subtly bouncing myself to make sure my knees weren't locked, And so, and they had me blinded. It was just complete, just white light. I couldn't even hardly even see, the front edge of the stage. And I was like, "Oh, this is great." Except for I didn't ever think about, I can still hear them. Right. Yeah. So like I could hear them rustling around. So it kind of like, it didn't negate it, but it was like, oh man, there's still people out there,
Yeah.
But anyway, so I get up and I sing the first song. For whatever reason, I hadn't linked those two things together in my brain before that moment. I mean, obviously I'd been at shows and I'd seen people perform and given applause, but I had I guess maybe for myself, I had never equated those two things.
The reaction.
Yeah. The reaction. Yeah. Like that was, and I just remember like thinking, and looking back now, I know that was the moment I was hooked. Right. Like I didn't at the time, but I know now, like that moment after singing that first song, like going, wait a minute, this isn't half bad, So I get done and I'm like, okay, that was all right. And I walk off stage and the first person I see is my grandma. She's crying, happy tears. And I thought that was really cool. Right. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. But it wasn't out of the ordinary. Right. Then the next person I see is my grandpa and he's crying happy tears. And I was like, that's not normal. That's different. So, and I remember, choked me up thinking about it. Yeah, I looked at him. He was crying, and I said, "I did it, Papa." He said, "You sure did, partner. You sure did." And he gave me a hug, And even at that point, I thought, "Okay, I did what Mom was saying, right?
Yeah.
I did it for my grandpa, and he's happy." And my grandparents were they were like producers on the show, but they weren't directors. So like they did, they had I'm sure they had a say in who got picked or whatever, but it wasn't like I was expecting to actually I didn't expect to get past that first round of auditions.
Yeah.
I get a call back for the next round of auditions. And I was like, oh, wait, what now? And so, and then that round, it's Branson. So if none of you guys have ever heard of Branson, it's more showy, right? It's kind of like a family country version of Vegas, I guess,
Yeah.
And so that the second audition was more like about dancing and choreography. And I didn't have those chops, which was fine. I didn't want to dance around and I'm Broadway style, that kind of performance, just not my style of performance. So I didn't make the second round, which was fine by me. But then moving forward from that, they were putting together an American Kids variety show, basically, that was going to Europe on tour for, I think, 2 weeks. And we ended up playing it. It was like the European Bluegrass Awards. So it was like all these people up there playing banjos and singing all these bluegrass tunes and sounding like, people from Kentucky with that high tenor and everything. And then they get done singing, they go up to talk to the mic and it's in, Serbian or whatever. And you're like, what in the world? Where am I? But so that was my first foray into performing, was my grandparents asked, "Do you want to go do this?" It's not as showy. It's more like, each performance is its own thing. So you can go out and you can sing your own song. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Because it was, going to Europe for 2 weeks, never been to Europe, 16 years old. And so I did that. And that was amazing. And doing that. So here's the full circle moment to your question. And even the little bit of like the Broadway kind of style of show that was, I knew this is not what I want to do. It's hard, right? And you got to kind of want to do that. And I have tons of respect for people that perform those kind of performances, Broadway or variety shows or whatever. But I was like, I don't know, I just had this draw to guitar. My grandpa, his main instrument was guitar, and I'd grown up around it. He'd actually given me a guitar when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something. And I had, at that point, had no interest, never did anything with it. So after we get back from Europe, and I remember, so that was November. So a month-ish later, we go on our Christmas break. And we, at the time, we all went to my grandparents. And when I was there over Christmas, I said, hey, can you show me how to play guitar? And my grandpa was like, sure. So he pulls out his guitar and he shows me 4 chords. He shows me C, A minor, F, and G. And I'm glad that I got F out in the very first lesson, so I got that bar chord down. That's a trick out there. If you guys are trying to learn guitar, make sure you learn
F first.
Learn F first. Yeah, it'll make everything a lot easier. So we were there, I think, for 2 weeks, and for whatever reason, man, I was just drawn to it, and kind of like, I guess, water off a duck's back, to use a cliche. It just made the best way I've ever been able to put it to anybody is in the movie. If you guys, anybody watching has seen the movie Good Will Hunting, there's a part where Minnie Driver's character is asking Matt Damon's character, basically, how does he do it? And he tells her, he's like, you play piano, right? And she's like, yeah. And he goes, okay, so Mozart, Beethoven, or whatever. She's like, I can play chopsticks. And he goes, okay, well, Mozart, Beethoven, they just looked at it and it made sense and they could just play. And so he's trying to, explain his math stuff to him. But that's the only way I can put it, is like, I've thought about before, like, I have no explanation as to why guitar was what drew me to music. So anyway, my grandpa showed me those 4 chords, and I went home, and this was at the, early stages of the internet. So there's no YouTube, there's no, lessons on the internet, but there was a thing that was becoming, starting to become popular, guitar tabs. And I haven't looked them up for a while. I'm sure there's still guitar tabs online, but at the time, there was this thing, online called guitar tabs, which, like I said, I'm sure there still is. But so when I got home, I asked Mom, hey, where's that guitar? And so she was like, oh, I think it's in the attic or something. And we went and dug it out. And sure enough, there it was. It's a Hondo 2 acoustic, man, just, an inexpensive acoustic guitar. And also in the case with it was one of those Mel Bay guitar chord books where it shows like the hand positions and the names and everything.
Everyone had the Mel Bay back then, man.
Yeah, dude. And so I pulled those out, and I can't remember. I think I found an app, or not, it wouldn't even an app, but a website to where somehow or another I could use the microphone on my guitar or on my computer and point at the guitar to tune it. I think so, because I didn't have a tuner. I didn't have, the tech nerd side of me. That seems like something that I would have done. But But so I got the guitar out, man. And at first I started just playing C minor, F, G over and over and over and over and over again. And you get tired of that after a few days. And I was like, well, I want to learn a song. I don't, and that's like I was saying about tabs. I found a guitar tab web. And so I was like, I'm going to learn how to play Country Boy Can't Survive. Like, I don't know why I picked that either. It was just like, that's what I'm going to learn.
Other than it's a kick-ass song.
Other than it's, yeah, exactly. It's a kick-ass song, man. And so I was like, I'm going to learn Country Boy Can't Survive. And just so happened to randomly find some guitar tab chord chart thingy on the internet. And so, spent days doing that until I could play it. Basically, I haven't stopped since then. I remember... Man. Well, so after I had Country Boy Can't Survive, I was like, I'm going to learn something else. And I just, went down the rabbit hole. So when I went back to visit my grandparents in February, my grandpa was like, hey, how's the guitar going? I was like, oh, let me show you. And I remember I was so stoked to go back because was going to show him what I had learned. And I knew that I was going to learn more. And I was, excited whatever he was going to show me. So I sit down and I show him all the chords that I've learned at that point. I've got major, minor, bar chords, everything. I'm just going through, check it out. Da, da, da. And I remember I stopped and I looked at my grandpa like as a, like, what do you think kind of look, And I remember he was real quiet and he was just staring at my left hand, my fretting hand. And I remember he looked at me and he goes, I can't teach you anything else. You already know everything that I know. And I remember, like I said, just being so bummed. And then also I didn't understand right at that point. I'm like, well, I've only been playing for 2 months. How is this, and for what, like I said, for whatever reason, it just makes sense to me. And it always has since that first time I picked it up. And, so that's the very long version of the answer of when I started playing guitar. And so from that point on, man, it's just been, I've got other little moments that have shaped who I am as a player going along, but that's when I started.
Right on. Who were your early, once you started playing, who were your early guitar heroes?
Somehow I had stumbled onto, I think, just being 16 and having the internet as being this new thing that was out there. I'd stumbled onto Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Yeah.
So they were really first. Skynyrd was first, but that was really short-lived. It was only, not short-lived, they still are, but the one that really got me was, at that point I'd been playing for, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8, 9 months, something like that. And my buddy, my best friend, Mike, came to pick me up, and I'll never forget this, man. It's like I said, it's another one of those things. I can tell you right exactly where I was, what parking spot he was in at the, at the condos when he came to pick me up. It's just first thing he says to me, he goes, doesn't seem like you're going to give up on this guitar thing anytime soon. So you need to listen to this guy. And he put in a CD, and I heard Stevie Ray Vaughan, The Sky Is Crying, for the first time, dude. And it it changed my life, man. To that point, I didn't know you could make a guitar sound like that, and also being a singer, he doesn't get enough credit for having such a great, Texas blues voice.
Yeah.
So I just gravitated towards it, and the soulfulness in his playing. So early on, even to this day, as I sit here right now talking to you, I'm still trying to be Stevie Ray Vaughan. Yeah, man. But no, it was Stevie and Lynyrd Skynyrd were really like Texas country, Southern rock, blues mixture that all those guys created back then is really the basis of my influences for sure.
Yeah, it's a really cool that whole Southern, they call it Southern rock.
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity to meet Gary Rossington several years ago.
Oh man,
and he was so, to me, it was like I was in the presence of a god.
Dude, yeah.
Skynyrd is a big influence on me growing up.
Yeah.
And they were there. I met him and Ricky Medlock at the time.
Yeah.
But something about that whole Southern sound, man. Like I said, when I met Gary Rossington, I had the opportunity to tell him, what an influence he was on my playing growing up.
Oh man, yeah.
He was such a nice guy, man. He was such a nice guy,
Dude, that's so awesome.
Yeah. And when I met you and started listening and following what was going on, because you're right, it was the MySpace days, remember?
Yeah. Yep.
You told me once one of your big influence at the time when I met you was Garth.
Oh yeah.
As far as your songwriting, your performing, that's totally. That's who you were kind of
before guitar. To rewind a little bit, Garth was I actually had a chance to tell him this, man. I remember when I started playing guitar and went down the Stevie and Lynyrd Skynyrd route, man, Garth, still, like, if I sit down and write a song, it's going to be, Garth Brooks influenced no matter what I do.
Yeah. It's crazy because I'm not proud of this, but the other day I was in Popeye's fried chicken.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was sitting there waiting on my order, and I heard something going on, and I was like, man, what, that is cool. I'm looking on my phone right now, and it's something I grew up with listening to is Zydeco.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I immediately we Shazam it now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
And I was like, oh, and then I just, in the last couple of weeks, I've gone through this rabbit hole, just rediscovering like
yes,
Zydeco music, and I love it. It's so cool. It's
yeah,
but
man.
I've forgotten more things than I can think of.
Yeah, I've that's funny you say that, because I've done the same thing here recently. Talking about Skynyrd, I've kind of gone back and even Stevie, I've gone back and started to kind of rediscover that stuff. Really the last few years since the pandemic, but it's to kind of remember, oh yeah, this lick or this song or these lyrics or whatever, inspired you to go on this journey to kind of go remember and like you said, finding stuff you're like, oh my God, I forgot about this song or this whatever. It's been fun, man.
Yeah. As a solo artist, where do you get your lyrics from? Like, are they from your life, or
that's
when you're writing lyrics for yourself, man? Do you pull from your past? Do you pull from your
Yeah, I have to. Nashville's, the songwriting community here is amazing. It's such a songwriter town, and that goes through its phases, but that comes with co-writing, and I've found that co-writing's hard for me, especially if it's my song idea and I bring it to a co-writing session. It's something that's happened to me. Like, if I can't write fiction. Well, I don't want to say I can't. I prefer not to. I don't like to. I've done it before, and they don't ever come out authentic. And as you know, like the audience is going to know, right? Like they're going to know if you're whatever song you're performing is authentic or not. Now, one thing that I have learned about myself is that I don't have to write it for it to be authentic. I can perform, with the band before I moved here. I mean, we played cover songs and originals for, well, that's what we were doing when we met. I was, we were playing the 3-4 hour dance hall nights, and you got to play cover songs, and I found that as long as I can relate to the lyrics, then I can perform it, right? But if I'm writing, it has to. I don't want to say 100% of the time, because I've written songs that were fiction, but I would say it's 99.9% of the time it's gonna be something that happened to me or I experienced or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're all and generally, like, if I'm playing a song, I'll kind of preempt it with a little, storytellers, like, this song is about blah blah blah, and whatever it is, it really happened to me. So and songs have come from things that I didn't even think about at the time, and then I'm just telling somebody a story, and they're like, "Oh, dude, that's a song," So
but I can imagine, man. As a songwriter, I don't write songs, but I can imagine like that'd be, you're just talking and somebody says,
Yeah, and that's it's well, and at least in country music, right, or the kind of country music that I play and perform and write. I think it goes back just to that authenticity thing, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm performing and I don't believe in the song, the audience they're gonna know that,
they're gonna
feel it. Yeah, whether it's conscious or subconscious. So if somebody else can write a song and I can be like, man, I connect with that. I'm gonna, like this keeps running through my head. One of our covers we used to do that I really loved doing was Amy's Back in Austin, Little Texas. I didn't write that, and I didn't have anybody that left Stillwater and went back to Austin, right? But my love of Stevie Ray Vaughan, my love of Texas music, I've had a broken heart before. You know what I mean? Like, I was able to put all those things together and still connect with this song that I didn't have anything to do with writing, So it's kind of but as a writer, I can't like I said, I've tried it before and I've done it a couple times, but I've got to write from experience and from the heart, you know?
Yeah. You were telling me about your father, your grandfather. They were famous, the stomp singers. Is that what you
said? Stomp dance. Yeah.
Stomp dance.
Yeah.
And you are part Shawnee.
Yep. Part Shawnee. Yeah.
What is it like for you to have that representation in this industry? And do you see it elsewhere?
I don't very much. I remember when I first moved here to town, there was another native guy that, everybody was like, "Oh, you guys look the same." Which is, I mean, yeah. And I mean, to their credit, we did look similar, but he moved back to, I friended him on Facebook, just like, "Hey, all these people are saying," and then he left Nashville at some point. I never actually got to meet the guy, but so my dad, my uncles, and all their cousins who Shawnee Way, Indian Way, they're also my uncles. A lot of them had this music dream. Mm-hmm. Actually, talking about the Randy Owens show, Wade Hayes was my uncle's lead guitar player for years. My uncle Gary Gibson in Norman, Wade was his lead guitar player for a few years. And from what Gary told me, Wade was like, "Come on, let's move to Nashville. I'm gonna go move to Nashville. Let's see what we can figure out." And my uncle was like, "No, you go ahead. I'm gonna stay here, because family's there and everything." And then Wade moved and had the success he had in the 90s of Old Enough to Know Better and all those songs. But I don't know, pride can be seen as a bad word. But I mean, I'm proud. I'm proud when people ask me if I'm any kin to my dad or my, his father. Because I know, like, that's where my sound came from. I mean, I got the nurturing from my mom's side of the family, but dad's side of the family, they all can and have and still do. And growing up and kind of seeing them come here, like my uncle came here to Nashville and tried to make it. And he had some of those stories of, unfortunately, people like, "Give me $10,000, I'm going to make you a star," and then they do everything they can to raise that money. And then, the people here just either leave them high and dry or give them a less quality, thing. I don't know if that happens so much anymore just because of the industry and the internet and being connected so much. But, back then those stories were a lot more prevalent. So I to kind of answer your question, like, I don't know if this is a question you're asking, but for me, I feel like I've got their hopes and dreams on my back, and they've not put that on me. I'm putting that on myself. No one's, saying you got to, make it for me or anything like that. But I know that I come from them, right? They laid those building blocks that I'm able to step on, these days. So, and like I said, nobody in the tribe has put that pressure on me by any means. Everybody's been super supportive. Yeah, it's me saying,
"Are they proud of you?"
Yeah. They've been nothing but supportive and tooting the horn for me. You know what I mean? Like, awesome, whenever something happens, I'll see them posting and, "Hey, look what Nick did," or "Look what da-da-da." And so that makes me feel good. I'm like, all right, I'm I guess bring us all along. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, that's great. Yeah, you should be proud, man. You did, like you said, man, what you did is something a lot of people talk about doing. Like, you were somewhat of a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
In Stillwater. And then you're like, "You know what, man, screw this. I'm going to Nashville. I'm going to try and do it." And you've, like you said, you've done everything you can in this industry. You've played guitar for some pretty notable artists.
Yeah.
You've toured, you've done a lot, man, to be proud of.
Well, thank you, brother. It's.
Have you seen the documentary Rumble?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great documentary. I recently connected with Stevie Salas.
Oh, cool.
Because a friend of mine knows him, and he goes, "You need to meet Stevie. You should have him on the show." So he connected us.
Oh, right.
Like he's been flying the flag for years,
dude. Yeah,
native flag.
Yeah, I didn't know this until we watched it. I watched it. There's a little theater back home in Tulsa that shows kind of like independent movies and documentaries and also regular movies. But so I went and saw Rumble in there, and I didn't know. So Link Wray, he's Shawnee. I didn't know that until watching it. I was like, what? And so I had to go through and go down the rabbit hole of reading all about that. And I get, if I remember correctly, it was Shawnee on his mother's side, if I remember correctly. So, I've got, I've got that connection to the, damn near beginnings of rock and roll, depending on how you're looking at it.
They're talking about Link's early stuff and they're playing it next to the I guess what you call, the native music. Like you hear it totally. So clearly, man.
Yeah, man.
It's pretty young. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, dude.
I've watched that documentary quite a few times,
It's cool. I've heard it said before that music is the only truly universal language.
Yeah.
Right. I've heard other people say it's math, but you gotta know how to do the math to speak it. Music, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Anybody can understand music anywhere in the world, no matter what race or religion, culture, whatever. If I went to the mountains of Siberia with a guitar and played a song for someone, they may not understand what I'm saying, but they would understand he's making music.
Perfect example when you went to Europe and you heard the bluegrass playing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I knew what he was doing when he went to talk. I had no idea what he was saying, but I knew what he was doing,
Hey man, just keep playing. Keep playing. Don't talk to me. Just keep. So yeah, it is. It is. I know that people always make the connection with music and math, but I don't like math music.
No, yeah,
I don't like to think about it like that.
No, yeah,
I like to think about it like everybody loves.
I want to feel it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that. I think that just speaks to the blues, right? How much that was. It just had to come out of them. That was just the music that was inside of those guys. That for whatever there's so many great ones. But start if you want to start with Robert Johnson, I'm sure there were ones before him. He was just the one that was recorded, but that music was in him. And then whether or not you believe the legend of him selling his soul to the devil to be able to play, it doesn't matter. That music was still in him. It had to come out. Maybe he sold his soul just to have the ability to do it or whatever, but that's what was inside that. And I think to kind of tie back to what you're asking, I think probably that's why I can't songs that didn't happen to me, is because my basis is in that blues, Southern rock, country music thing, I had never thought of it until right now, but that's probably at least part of the link to not being able to make up songs.
Yeah. Well, brother, it was good catching up with you, man.
Yeah, you too, man. It's been awesome.
Where can people find you online, man?
Yeah, I think all of my social media is all Nick Gibson Music. So it's, at Nick Gibson Music for Instagram. I have a TikTok. There's nothing up there, but I have a TikTok. It's Nick Gibson Music, Facebook.com/Nick Gibson Music. So I think all of the social stuff, all is Nick Gibson Music. Websites, nickgibson.com and .net. I've got both of those. Luckily, that was a story in and of itself to get nickgibson.com. But so yeah, I'm out there and all the streaming platforms. So there's a guy in, I think it's England, named Nick Gibson, who puts out like techno rave music. And I don't know, maybe you've got somebody who could help, but they won't separate us on the streaming platforms.
So both of your albums,
yeah. So it's got like Nick Gibson. So my only two albums that are up are Nick Gibson, No Other Way, and Nick Gibson, You in Tennessee. But then those are also connected to this techno artist guy's stuff. So I got to figure out how to get those split. But I remember the time I figured that out was somebody came there like, hey man, I bought all your records. And I was like, oh, right on. And I thought, all of them? There's only two. And they were like, yeah, man, a couple of them are good and they sound like you, but some of them are kind of weird. And I was like, what? I said, I only have two. I have, no other way, and you in Tennessee. And he goes, oh no, hold on, because he'd done it on iTunes. He goes, here, look, and he showed me, and it was all all this rave techno. Nothing against that, but that's not what I do, right?
No.
Anybody, if you guys go check out my music,
he's just the country guy.
Yeah, I'm the country guy. There will be techno music part of it. That's another dude. So,
well, brother,
at some point I'll get those split. But yeah,
yeah, or become a techno guy,
or I'll say, you know what, I'm gonna try this techno thing for the time being and see what I can come up with.
Right on, man. Well, as you know, our podcast, it's called Is Breakfast Included?
Yeah.
And if we were having breakfast, which the next time I'm in Nashville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, for sure.
What would you have?
Ooh. Okay. So, I mean, being, as we talked about the Southern, thing, and being in Oklahoma, Texas, like if I just had to pick something, it would probably be biscuits and sausage gravy, pancakes, eggs, just kind of that traditional thing, man. Short stack of pancakes, sausage gravy, biscuits gravy, and some scrambled eggs, man. Yeah. Some orange juice.
Well, brother, thank you for your time. And
thank you for having me.
Definitely keep in touch, man.
I will, bro. Like I said, I'll let you know when we get this new stuff going, man. And love to hear what you think of it.
Will do. Right on. Nick Gibson. A great guy, right? You can find out more about Nick at nickgibson.com or on all the social medias at Nick Gibson Music. Make sure you check it out. Support him. I'm really looking forward to that new music he's got coming out. While you're online, check out isbreakfast.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Rate and review our podcast. And while you're there, buy a shirt. Hey, man, that time of the year is coming up where you got to give out gifts. Why not it be one of our shirts? All right, guys, I am done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.